Today I have the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo with me. Actually, I've been using it for a month or so. This laptop here can arguably be credited for the multi-display revolution in the laptop industry. It's super expensive and comes with the latest of hardware you can imagine on a laptop. But one question remains, is it really necessary to have dual displays in a portable machine? And more importantly, did it enhance my productivity during my time of use? Well, let's find out. So design first, and as expected, this one comes with an all-aluminum body, and yeah, it's as premium can get, and also it's heavy. If you were used to carrying around lightweight laptops, this one will give you a tough time as it weighs a hefty 2.5 kgs. Besides that, ASUS really went all in designing this laptop, and I have all the praise for the company. The device is really sturdy and well built with no flex at all on the lid and on the keyboard. However, the same cannot be said for the secondary display. It ever so slightly flexes, but only with an intentionally strong notch. Therefore, there's not an alarming issue at all, even when you're sketching on it. The base of the laptop does not lay flat as the traditional laptops do. The Argo Lift screen hinge we've seen in ASUS Zenbook laptops makes its presence here as well. It lifts the entire chassis, thus giving it an inclined layout when opening the device to a normal layout for better heat dissipation, while a rubberized padding runs along the bottom of the laptop. Talking about thermals, the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo has 5 copper heat pipes that are connected to 2 fans. Complementing the thermal performance are the big air vents on the sides and the hidden ones on the hinge of the laptop. And if you think that is not enough to efficiently cool down this device, ASUS has also included a turbo button that pushes the fans to the max of their ability. For a device that is so heavily targeted for the content creators, the port selection on the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo is kinda abysmal, and that is a little disappointing. On the left, you get the DC power in, a standard HDMI 2.0 and a USB 3.1 Gen 2 port, while there's a Thunderbolt 3 USB-C, an audio jack, and another USB 3.1 Gen 2 port on the other side. So no LAN connection, and more importantly, no dedicated SD card reader. In terms of wireless connectivity, the Zenbook Pro Duo comes with Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.0. Now let's talk the display. The primary display here is a glossy 15.6 inches 4K OLED panel with touch support, and I'm sure that this is the best display I've ever laid my eyes on. The contrast and the colors, my god, I can praise them all day. Additionally, it is also HDR compatible and has 100% DCI-P3 coverage, making it one of the most color-accurate display on any laptop in the market right now. Well, this thing costs a fortune, so anything less would not be justified either. Minimal bezels further add to the beauty of the display. You get a clean viewing experience with 89% screen-to-body ratio it's got going on. The top also houses the array microphones and the IR webcam, which supports Windows Hello login, and let me tell you, it works almost every single time. Getting to the secondary display, it's a 14 inches 4K-ish matte IPS display with touch support. I say 4K-ish because it's not tall enough to be considered as a true 4K panel. ASUS calls it ScreenPad Plus, and there are certainly some clever design choices here. The matte not only makes for a non-reflective panel, but it's also simultaneously the better surface of the two to use the pressure-sensitive stylus that comes with the laptop. With that out of the way, let me answer the most burning question about this laptop. Just how productive is the wide second display? Short answer, it gets pretty close to perfection, not gonna lie. But to my dismay, the potentials of this magnificent piece of hardware does not feel accompanied with solid software. But it's not downright miserable, so don't get your eyes rolling. First and foremost, there is no built-in presets for certain software packages like Adobe Suite to work effortlessly on the dual screen. Secondly, God forbid you put the machine to sleep with multiple apps running simultaneously on both the screens. Because logging back in would mean the ones previously running on the ScreenPad Plus magically shift to the top, making you frantically drag them down again. Now let me give you a quick rundown on how to get around making use of it, which is pretty easy to be very honest. Dragging around an app would trigger 3 options to either switch them to the opposing screen, pin it to the launcher on the ScreenPad Plus, or extend an app throughout both displays. The ability to extend across the screens comes in handy the most when you're using certain apps that require a rather large screen space. For example, in Adobe Premiere Pro, you can have the second display dedicated to the video's timeline for a better workflow. But see how there's a distinct lag when dragging through the timeline. That's the aforementioned janky software at work. Similarly, you can sketch on the ScreenPad Plus for finer editing on the Adobe Photoshop. Obviously, it's not meant to be used as an extension of one app only. You can concurrently organize up to 3 apps on the secondary screen. And if there's a set of them you frequently use, you can group them together and launch them all with one simple click. This isn't as fluid and fast as you'd want, to be honest. Similarly, you can also easily interchange the app's position between the screen using the task swap option on the launcher below or a dedicated button. Furthermore, ASUS has implemented features like Quick Key, which lets you program macros to run certain apps or actions, handwriting with text recognition ability, and a number key, which launches a number key. So yeah, an additional screen sure does enhance the scope of productivity on the Zenbook Pro Duo. You can have multiple apps running at a time without having to bother with congested screen space or frequently switching between them. But I can't help but wish ASUS had collaborated with Microsoft to a greater extent to optimize the software end of this machine. At times, the broken software makes you feel like you're on a low-spec machine, which is simply not the case here. The top-end Intel processor should not have, at least in theory, resulted in such performance. At least I was not expecting that. You can choose between Intel's 2 Coffee Lake processors, the Core i9-9750H or the i9-9980HK, and the latter's the one on my unit. Onto the graphics, you get the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060 with 6GB of GDDR6V RAM. That's a pretty powerful combo, but for its price, I was expecting at least RTX 2070. Plus, the primary screen here is 4K, and to play AAA titles at max settings, RTX 2060 is just not the best of choices. But regardless, I put the Zenbook Pro Duo to test. But before going in, the dual displays present another possibility for gaming as well. Sounds great, but you're greeted with some problems here as well. Trying to access other apps on ScreenPad Plus while playing games on full screen automatically minimized the game. Yeah, the software to complement the dual screen really could have been better. Don't lose hope just yet because we found a workaround. Interacting with apps on the second display is possible when setting the game's screen mode to either windowed or borderless. Now, talking about gameplay, I tried Apex Legends, Battlefield 5, and Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. With Battlefield, it ran around 35 to 40 FPS under 4K resolution in ultra settings, while that jumped to 60 FPS on average while lowering the resolution to 1080p. Now, since the game can make the use of ray tracing cores, I turned that on as well. With this, the frame rate dropped to an average of 50 FPS on 1080p. The laptop also got quite loud and hot too, with the temperature rising to around 45 degrees Celsius even with turbo cooling turned on. Apex Legends gave around 30 to 35 FPS in ultra settings at 4K resolution and about 90 to 100 FPS at 1080p. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, on the other hand, stayed between 30 and 40 FPS in ultra settings at 4K and remained at around 60 FPS in 1080p. Apart from gaming, the Zenbook Pro Duo handles every other task you throw at it with ease. Editing videos in Adobe Premiere Pro while simultaneously playing music, opening Photoshop and Google Chrome with multiple tabs did not break a sweat either. The laptop does get mildly hot in such scenarios. The spectacular multitasking is partly because I have the 32GB RAM variant clocked at 2666 MHz, which is the highest one available, while options for 8 and 16GB are also available. But I do have to warn you that the RAM here is not user upgradable, as the one coming with this laptop is soldered. In terms of storage, you get up to 1 TB of PCIe Gen 3 SSD, which thankfully is upgradable unlike the RAM. With such great read and write speeds, installing heavy apps or games was completed within just a couple of minutes. The keyboard's really nice as well, with the minimal 1.4mm key travel. It is backlit with 3 levels of brightness but not RGB, though that's not an issue for me as I'm really not into RGB cults. Typing experience here is terrific and it's easy to get to the keys without any trouble. However, since the top portion of the laptop's base is consumed by the additional screen, there is no wrist rest. Well, ASUS has compensated that by including a separate wrist rest that also reflects the notification LED that's located beneath the keyboard. That's another sacrifice to portability. The trackpad on the right side of the keyboard is just as difficult to get used to as you can imagine. Well, I'm not a fan of requiring a shift in hand position to access it in the middle of typing. Keeping that aside, this glass trackpad is really well built and uses Windows precision drivers. The right and left buttons are clicky and responsive too. What's interesting is that this trackpad also doubles as numpad. Don't worry, scrolling is still possible with the numpad turned on. The audio on the Zenbook Pro Duo is another thing that has impressed me. It features a bottom-firing stereo audio system which is certified by Harman Kardon. Though it's not definitely the loudest I've heard in a laptop, the audio is crisp and clear with rich bass and nice surround sound feel. Just have a listen to this audio. Finally, let's get to the battery. Despite its big 8-cell 71 watt-hour battery, its endurance did not sit well with me no matter how much I tried to convince myself of the fact that this laptop has dual 4K screens and a processor with 45-watt TDP. The battery life would range from 3 to 5 hours during normal usage, which consisted of a lot of web browsing, photo editing, and running a couple of other small apps on the side. I usually kept the brightness of the primary and the secondary display at about 50%. You can also minimize the resolution of the ScreenPad Plus to save battery or disable it altogether via the dedicated button. On the charging front, the power adapter is big and heavy too, which takes about 2 hours to go from 0 to 100%. Well, in conclusion, I don't quite know how to feel about the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo. It's exciting, it's innovative, it's bold, and it's expensive. Let's not forget that. Its dual displays really bring something new to the laptop industry while amplifying the level of productivity as well. The performance and the fantabulous primary display are so damn stellar, and it hurts me to have to shift back to my old laptop. Having said that, ASUS needs to polish its software via a software update and fast, or at least in its next offering. The dual display experience and the productivity could have been so much better, but we're left unattended and wanting for more. Cramming in a secondary display has hurt the laptop's portability too. An uncomfortable trackpad, a separate wrist rest, and a massive power adapter for a laptop that already weighs so heavy means that you'll have a hard time carrying them around. In the end, I believe that it depends upon who you ask. This is definitely not made for a value-intended buyer, but the innovation that it brings with it, I am sure many will fall in love with it right away. So will the amused crowd go buy this thing? Well, I have my doubts, but you can quote me when I say that the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo will remain in the hearts of many for ages. So that is all for our review of the ASUS Zenbook Pro Duo. Do let us know in the comments below what you think about this laptop. Till then, I'm Pratima Adhikari and I'll see you in the next one.